Hi, this is Robert Clinkybeard and David Anderson with the Commercial Landscapers Podcast. We're going to take 20 minutes of your life to deliver some amazing content from accomplished leaders and business owners and provide you some value that you can take back to your business, your family, and your personal life and transform your life. We hope you really enjoy this. Cheers, everyone. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Robert Clinkenbeard with the Commercial Landscapers Podcast. I have on once again, and welcome, Daniel Currin, the owner of Greenscape out of North Carolina. And I have a guest all the way from New Delhi, India, Utkarsh Sharma. So welcome.
Thanks for having us.
So tell me a little bit about yourself, Utkarsh.
Thanks
Tell
for
me a
having
little
me
bit about
here.
your background.
Sure, thanks. I am an engineer. I graduated as a mechanical engineer, and then I started off my first company a couple of years after graduation. And it's mostly been a story in automation. I started off working on automating video surveillance. You know, it's like a very mechanical task. There are tons of screens in front of you. You can't just see all of it. We tried that for security, then we tried it out for operations management, kind of pivoted across a couple of applications trying to see what fits. And then we landed on using automation on mapping, like you use satellite images and drone images and you try to extract maps from them. And then we were working on applications that were large scale, city scale mapping, country scale mapping. And somehow it seems that the process takes a lot of time. And it's possible to cut down on that time. As you cut down on that time, the application that is supposed to be built on the data gets it's speeded up quite a bit. And we were looking for some of the applications that can be high frequency, because not everybody wants to map cities every day. And then property mapping just came across. Someone from Rainbow Tree Care came to our stall when we were speaking to user conference in San Diego. And hey, they said, you know, can you measure shrubs on a property? And we were like, oh, can you even measure shrubs on a property? Because we were used to measuring roads and buildings. And then, yeah, so that was really surprising for us. That kind of introduced the whole landscape and the facilities maintenance space to us sometime last year.
Okay,
and
very cool.
Then, yeah, it's been working with the industry, figuring out how it works. Basically learned everything on the go. Felt like an outsider a year ago, but folks like Daniel have made us feel right, like we belong here.
That's good. Well, Daniel's a nice guy some of the time. So, I mean, that touches on what we talked about a few weeks ago when you were on, Daniel, where, I love the landscape industry. But, I feel we discussed how I was a little bit behind in some of the technology part. And, a lot of people are trying to catch up with that, especially, the sales process. Talk to me a little bit more about just some of what the two of you been discussing, some of the technology advances you've been working on.
Yeah, thanks, Robert. Just I was thinking while I was sitting here on a side note, depending on where in the world you're listening to this podcast, at least two of us have pretty strong accents, which is fun. So I think, internally in our company, we've looked at a lot of automation, and that's been like physical, like in production when it comes to robots and things like that, and even just using automation for training, and then but then also it's pretty clear that really kind of outside of operations is where, in the kind of current state of the industry, there's so much opportunity for improving the whole business, right? And so so when SiteRecon came to my attention, I was really curious because we put a lot of time and energy into measuring properties in detail, so that we get good estimates, so that then we can sell at the right margins, and then more importantly, produce at those margins because we've got a good estimate, right? And that all comes down to the property and getting it measured. And so, and that part of the that part of the industry is very close to my heart because my first job was in sales, and at the time, I did all the measuring of all the opportunities I found, and did all that measuring by hand with a wheel, and it took a lot of time, but was necessary. And so the first part of automating that piece was getting rid of the wheel and going online measuring. And now I think we're like that was kind of 2.0 or whatever. And so what SiteRecon is doing is 3.0, 4.0, kind of beyond that. So the ability to for our sales guys to be able to use their tool to basically just plug in the property, get measurements, and then make that process go from being hours and days to like literally no real time of theirs, has been really cool. So it's been one of the of 2020. I would say it's the biggest kind of win we've had for true automation, and actually replacing a position that we had open during COVID that we no longer need, which is that estimating position. So it really kind of checks a lot of boxes for me.
That's awesome. Yeah, because I always remember that I would get so many complaints from my business developers who, especially in Arizona, who would complain about having to go to a large HOA. It's 100+ degrees out there,
right?
And it's literally 1-2 square miles, and they have to sort of think about measuring and estimating, and it's just brutal for them. So I used to get so many complaints. So I can imagine that the technology to be able to take that piece away and speed up that process would be a tremendous help.
Yeah, that's what we're seeing. Yeah, I was thinking about like good salespeople will shortcut the estimating process because they want to move on to the next prospect or real sale, and so that's kind of can be detrimental in its own right. And then bad salespeople will spend way too much time estimating because it's more comfortable than prospecting. So by removing this activity from both either a good or a bad salesperson, you're moving towards better sales because you're going to identify low performers and either train and recalibrate them, or you're going to move them on. And then your good salespeople, this adds significant time back to what I've seen with my team to be able to prospect and network, which that's what makes sales fill in the funnel at the top, not the work in the middle sometimes.
Right. I would also imagine that it's bringing in consistent data. You're not necessarily relying on, a human being and maybe feeling lazy one day. If you have that data coming in, you apply that then to your production rates within your system, and it's spitting out consistent data. Am I thinking that the right way?
Yeah, definitely. And that's Utkarsh. When Robert was saying that, I was like, yeah, that's really key. And how are you guys doing that, or how does that work? Because we've seen good data. So yeah. How do you actually make that happen?
Yeah.
So we've got this is our job, right? And I always joke about it that in the industry, you have an estimator, you have a salesperson, you have an operations manager, but there is no real measurer. Although it's so like even the estimator is like an estimator, there is no measurer. But when it's someone's job to measure the property day in and day out, that's what they're supposed to do. And they come from a pedigree of mapping. So like all of our teams, they have mapped cities, towns. They have the expertise of using satellite images to just extract changes in the vertical movement of ground by a few centimeters. Like they are really skilled at a lot of these stuff, but so they come from a pedigree of mapping and GIS. So for them, like accuracy and getting this right is built into their skill set. And so that's our team. And of course, automation plays a part there. So we have automated some parts of the process. Right now, we are building some algorithms to take away turf annotation and sidewalk annotations out from the process, like taking them over to machine learning. So that helps. But the real, I think, the juice of the whole game is in having the right people who have this job to do And like interpreting images seems to be a very simple task, right? But it is not. Especially when you've got a tree, there's a shadow behind the building, and you've got to figure out if there's a bed in that shadow, if there's turf in that shadow. Unless someone has the experience of going through tons of properties and tons of images, they're not going to make the right call.
Right, that's a good point.
Yeah, we actually had one, like, I feel like in my tenure, 15 plus years, we've had like one really good kind of measure estimator guy, and he literally had was getting his PhD. It was such a non-sustainable solution. He just wanted a job with some flexibility so he could get his PhD, and he did a very, very good job. But like, I mean, the amount of, like, that person doesn't walk into my office very often, and so he was not a sustainable long-term solution. So that's where, again, what I love SiteRecon and being able to partner with them and use their tool is like, seems much more scalable and long-term than, you know, trying to find another starving PhD student.
Right, good point. Well, the other point as well that crossed my mind is you're eliminating some of the influence of what might be happening on that property right now. Now, a good example is that, you know, if you've had, you know, whatever reason, a landscape that's become overgrown, and you have an estimator that actually goes out and starts to measure, and they're sometimes influenced by the current condition of the property, and they might, you know, increase the hours or whatever it is. Whereas in this scenario, you can actually still have that physical count and treat, you know, for example, a cleanup as a different line item per se.
Yeah, that's actually, yeah, I think that kind of goes into that consistency thing like you talked about. And a lot of times people think in person is the only way you get there. But from what I've seen using technology and people on Utkarsh team and stuff like that, I think we're getting there in other ways. And I think Rod told you too, why I kind of love this concept and looking for other ways in our company to find good partners to outsource is because, you know, I mean, again, we're labor challenged not only on operations, that's where it's maybe most prevalent, but there's still plenty of labor challenges across all functions of the business. And so is finding ways to solve that. We talked about bringing people in outside of the industry to come in, and I think last time you and I talked about outside, a new salesperson who was from outside the industry and bringing him in. And I think that's great and continues to be a strategy of ours, but this is, again, another part of that strategy of like, hey, if we don't have to have this position and can maximize the people we have in place currently through this tool, then that's a huge win. We're in the middle of outsourcing our entire accounting department to a third party. And my belief is that we're actually probably going to get equal to or better result than what we have been capable of getting ourselves. And then now have less to focus on, so that we can focus on what makes us money, which is, taking care of the customer.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I think still a lot of people are still stuck on the traditional ways, but, you know, it's good to see, you know, you're just looking at, you know, what are the technology advancements, what are the things that we could be doing differently, because you're right, there are a ton of labor challenges out there, whatever level, whether it be field level, whether it be management level, just trying to find those good people. So Utkarsh, have you started to get into our industry, what other things are you seeing, you know, are shortfalls or ways in which the industry can improve?
Yeah, so we noticed that there's a set of facilities maintenance companies in the industry. They are responsible for maintaining the interior and the exterior of the property, and they have the most extensive estimating system. So we have come across customers who are measuring around 30 data points on a single property. And so that includes stuff like looking at the coverage of leaves, because they want to figure out how much leaf removal is going to cost them. They are looking at shrubs inside beds because they want to figure out which are the beds having 20% shrub coverage, which are the beds having 80% shrub coverage. And so they're looking at all of these data points and trying to really nail down how much it's really going to cost to maintain that site. Now, as you get more granular, you get more exact with that estimate. And then there are others in the industry who are saying, hey, I just want turf, I want beds, I'm going to figure out what the edges are going to look like, and I don't want anything else. Now, of course, there's this contract that determines what they have to maintain on that property, but it's definitely, if you're looking at turf, it's, of course, you're looking at hard edges and soft edges too. Otherwise, how are you going to estimate the edging? So I think there's this level of detail that everyone can really get into if they had the right production numbers to multiply those measurements by. So if you haven't really factored in the production number, how much that's going to cost, then the measurement, of course, seems useless. But once you do that, you can get more exact with the estimate. That's one thing. I think there's a lot of value to be derived there. I think a lot of value is to be derived from going into 3D. So I have noticed that the lawn mowing equipment specifically, it comes in with a specification of what the terrain is like, because that affects the safety of operations. But that is something that is left to ops guys going on into the field and figuring out if the mower is suitable or not. But it is not something that is before the fact. It is not analyzed, right? And if you analyze that as part of the estimating process, then you build it into the bid. You build in something that can operate on those slope levels, right? And you can build in that cost. So there is a lot of opportunity to look at those little numbers on the property and really hone down the estimates and get to a more precise number for what it's going to cost to maintain that property.
Yeah. I was going to say you'll get more accurate bidding on the property, but there's probably some other benefits around safety as well, making sure that you're using the right machinery and jobs. Yeah. But any other challenges you're seeing out there? Any other uses?
A couple of others. So right now, so let's say you have a mower that's 48 inches. And if you have an insight of the smallest bottleneck on the turf polygons on the site, you can figure out if a 48-inch mower is going to fit through that, or you want to look for a smaller mower to look for those, mow that specific stretch of turf, and then you carry a bigger mower for the bigger areas of turf. So figuring out what equipment needs to be deployed on what site can improve. Also, if you just go downstream from that property map, once you start planning operations, you really need to know what the property is like. Like you need to know how much turf is there, but you should know what that turf is shaped like, right? That's how you're going to figure out what more you want to deploy there. And then you can kind of get more detail, like you can figure out the paths that this mower will take on that polygon. And then from that path, you can backtrack to an actual number for the hours needed to mow that site. Now, once you draw up that plan can be taken into the field by someone who is supposed to maintain the property. And when they're maintaining the property, it is possible to track their location and say, hey, did they follow that plan or not? And if they did, then they did a good job. If they did not, then you can figure out what's the deviation from that plan. So, I mean, these are applications that we are thinking about. We are just starting off with mapping the property to help with estimating on bids. But if you win that bid, then you got to plan the operation. And after that, you got to track the crew that's on the site. And I think there are efficiencies in all of these steps. There's a lot of value in making things transparent, especially because the best tracking software that the industry has right now, it gives you tracking abilities within a quarter mile of a property. Like, that's not just great. I mean, you want to get to meter and sub-meter level accuracies. And it's possible. Technology was there.
Well, I always remember that companies like Valleycrest, if they got some really large properties, like big, huge HOAs, they would actually send out a specialized team to evaluate the best way to go through that property, the most efficient way. So again, if you're able to do that through software, then you're probably going to, that'll save you from sending out a team. You'll be able to do it all online virtually,
Absolutely. And the idea is what you're looking for is a map, and you need to feed into the system the equipment that you have, right? And based on these two inputs, if an operations manager is able to figure out when he's on the site, how he's going to plan out the assembly line of setting up the operation, then the system can figure it out too, based on the same set of logic. And of course, I mean, the system need not be 100% right on all the parameters it comes out with, but then you get that saving, right? You don't have to estimate and plan out every little bit of things, and the system helps out with smaller details, and you can just kind of pull in the strings and make sure that the net result is the same. And as you said, you don't have to go out onto the property and see what that's like. Of course, what really helps is getting the latest data into the system. And the folks we are working with, near map, they fly out every few months on a lot of different cities. So the data is pretty recent. And a lot of the imagery that we end up getting is leaf off, like there are no leaf on trees. So like you can see through. So it kind of comes very close to a site visit also.
Right. Danielle, any other sort of final comments before we close up here?
Thanks, Robert. That last piece that Utkarsh was talking about is just really like fascinating to me. I think, just the idea of just coming out of an estimate with a site map or a job map, however you want to describe that, that you can hand off to the people who are going to execute the estimate that was that was put together is huge. I always kind of joke that every year the industry magazines have the mower times and like specs on their mower, but one of the big ones is how quickly they can mow grass. And I'm like, well, how good's the operator, right? Because a bad operator doesn't come anywhere close to those numbers. And a good operator, does that take your best operator to hit those numbers? And so it's really kind of like, how do we get operators to be good operators? And I think it's training. And so site mapping is a huge part of that training. It's a visual thing that everyone can understand and see. It just seems like that would be a really fun next step in SiteRecon's, kind of iteration.
That's cool. Awesome. Utkarsh, how can people get in touch with you just to find out a little bit more about how what you're developing?
So visit us on order.siterecon.ai. That's order.siterecon.ai. And you'll find my calendar there. Would love to chat. You'll find everything that you need there.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you guys for joining me today. It's been a good conversation. I think there's definitely some great opportunities there to get our landscape industry up to speed a little bit more. So thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much, Robert, for having us here and letting me talk about all of this geeky stuff.
No problem at all.
Thanks, Robert.
Okay. Thanks, Danielle. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
See you guys.
Hopefully that was pure dead brilliant for you today and you got some great takeaways for your business or your personal life. This is Robert Clinkybeard along with David Anderson, and we'd love to get you and your friends to join us in our future journey. So please subscribe through our website, commerciallandscapers.com, or through the various podcast channels out there. But anyway, hopefully you have an awesome day. Cheers.